I was working Deep Creek Patrol in the autumn of 2018, October specifically, when the hemlocks turn that sick gray-brown color and you can see through the stands all the way down to the limestone. I'm a game warden, Cherokee tribal game warden, technically, though my jurisdiction overlaps with the federal side near Klingman's Dome. Been doing this work for 17 years now. You learn the territory. You learn what moves through it, what doesn't. Bears don't cross certain elevations after September. Coyotes avoid the limestone belt entirely. Something about the mineral content throws off their navigation. You document it, you map it, you move on. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the Uktana, the horned serpent. Said it lived in the places where water remembers, the sinkholes, the collapsed caves, anywhere the creek sounds like it's breathing instead of flowing. I respected those stories, treated them like environmental wisdom wrapped in metaphor, you know? Don't swim in sinkholes because of undertow. Don't follow steam vents because of toxic gas. The elders were protecting us with the tools they had. I don't think that anymore. It started with the livestock reports. Farmers along the park boundary, up near the 441 access road, were losing cattle. Not unusual, except these weren't coyote kills. No throat wounds, no drag marks, nothing a predator does. The animals would just vanish near the tree line. We'd find them days later, if we found them at all, and when we did. The bones were clean, polished clean, like they'd been boiled, but there was no fire damage, no scavenger marks, and they were always near water. I logged it as possible illegal dumping, chemical runoff, maybe someone disposing of livestock improperly. I took a partner with me, Jake Morrissey, State Wildlife Division, about 26 years old. Good kid, eager, had all the new equipment, the thermal imaging cameras. We set up near one of the hemlock die-off zones at about 3,000 feet. You know those areas, where the woolly adelgid killed everything, and now it's just gray skeletons standing in rows. Looks like a mass grave. Even in daylight, it feels wrong. We found the first deer carcass around 1700 hours. Thermal showed it as cold, been dead at least 12 hours. But here's the thing, the tracks around it moved in circles, perfect circles, getting wider and wider, like something had herded it, driven it toward the sinkhole at the center. Deer don't move like that. Prey animals flee in straight lines. They panic, they scatter, they don't walk in geometric patterns toward danger. Jake wanted to take samples. I should have stopped him. We found the cavity at dusk. The new collapse couldn't have been more than a few days old. The hemlock roots had given way and opened up this shaft, maybe 3 feet across, dropping straight down into darkness. And it was exhaling. I mean that literally. Warm air was coming up in rhythmic pulses, and it smelled like wet copper and ozone, like a lightning strike, but underground. My grandmother's voice was in my head, never follow water that breathes. Jake lowered the camera probe. We had it on a 50-foot coax cable, waterproof housing, and the works. The video feed came through clear for about 6 seconds. Then we saw the scales, dinner plate sized, overlapping, wet, catching the LED beam like polished shale. The camera tilted. Jake was trying to get a better angle. And that's when the feed cut. Not gradually, just static, complete electromagnetic interference. We pulled the cable up. The camera housing was crushed, not cracked, crushed, like something had applied perfect uniform pressure from all sides. Jake logged it as equipment failure. I didn't argue. What was I supposed to say? That night, we camped about 200 yards from the site. Standard procedure, document, observe, don't contaminate. I had motion sensors set in a perimeter, VHF radio contact with the ranger station, Garmin GPS map 64s tracking our position. Around 0200 hours, I woke up to a vibration, not sound. Vibration, coming up through the ground like a subsonic drumbeat. Too deep to hear, but you could feel it in your teeth, in your chest. The motion sensors were triggering, but there was nothing visible. No heat signatures, no movement. I checked our boot prints from earlier. They were filled with water, clear water, welling up from below, even though we hadn't had rain in 8 days. And the sound, God, the sound. It was like the creek was breathing. In and out, this wet gasping through the limestone fissures, and it was getting louder. Jake's radio squelched. Are you hearing this? Yeah. What is it? I didn't answer, because I knew. Somewhere in the part of my brain that still remembered my grandmother's stories, I knew exactly what it was. The Uktana was waking up. Jake went missing around 0340 hours. I heard him shout once, and then his flashlight beam was visible under the surface of a pool we'd marked as only 6 inches deep. I ran toward it, and I watched the beam twist downward, spiral, like something was pulling it into a drain that shouldn't exist. Then it came up. I've been trained to observe and document. That's the job. You see something, you categorize it, you compare it to known species, you file a report. But there's no category for what I saw. It was serpentine, maybe 20 feet of visible body, armored in those shale-like scales, each one wet and reflecting the moonlight. The head, Christ, the head was wrong. Eyes like molten amber, glowing from within, and a single antler curving up from the skull like a deer's, but made of something that looked like polished bone and living tissue at the same time. And the air around it bent. I mean that. The space near its body distorted like heat shimmer, and my radio started screaming, pure static, high-pitched, drilling into my skull. I dropped it. My GPS was spinning, displaying impossible coordinates. 48 degrees north 1 second, 12 degrees south the next. It looked at me. I don't know how else to describe it. Those eyes fixed on me, and I felt the vibration intensify until my vision blurred, until I couldn't tell if the sound was coming from the ground or from inside my own head. I fired the flare gun. I wasn't trying to hit it. I just needed light, needed something to break that connection. The flare hit the water, and the whole pool lit up red, and I saw the full length of it coiled beneath, saw Jake's body suspended in the current, like he was floating in amber. And then the entire bank collapsed. Landslide, massive one. The hemlock roots gave way, and half the hillside came down, and I was running, stumbling through deadfall in the dark, my ears ringing so loud I couldn't hear anything else. I made it back to the truck, don't remember how. The official report lists it as sinkhole collapse and probable drowning. They recovered Jake's body 3 weeks later. DNR Protocol 34A, waterborne fatality. The medical examiner said it was consistent with submersion trauma. My recordings were corrupted, all of them. Just a low-frequency hum that makes your fillings ache if you listen too long. I tried to explain what happened. Showed them the GPS logs, the impossible data, They told me it was an equipment malfunction, magnetic anomaly from the limestone, stress-induced confusion. I went to see Thomas Wolfe. Elder, lives up near the Kuala boundary. He's 93, doesn't talk much to outsiders, but he knows the old stories, the real ones, not the tourist versions. I told him what I saw. He nodded, didn't look surprised, just sad. The Uktana guards the sleeping paths, he said. The places between this world and the old one. When the land is disturbed, when the water changes, it wakes. And when it wakes, it remembers who doesn't belong. He told me the stories. How the Uktana's breath kills, how its gaze breaks minds, how you don't cross the places where water sounds like breathing, especially not after dark, especially not in the hemlock graveyards, where the boundary is thin. I thought those were metaphors. You wanted data. That's what you said when you called. You're documenting regional predator reports, unusual wildlife behavior. You need field testimony from someone who knows the terrain. Fine, here's your data. Don't patrol past Deep Creek when the air smells like metal and ozone. Don't investigate sinkholes that exhale. Don't trust your equipment when it starts giving you impossible readings, because it's not malfunctioning. It's telling you something is there that doesn't fit your categories. And if you hear water breathing, if you hear that wet, rhythmic sound coming up through limestone at night, you turn around. You don't investigate. You don't document. You leave, because that's not the mountain breathing. That's it. Remembering. I still patrol. Different sector now. Further east. But sometimes at night, when I'm filing reports, I hear that subsonic hum through the floorboards. Feel it in my chest like a second heartbeat. And I know it's still down there. Still waiting. Still guarding the sleeping paths. I need to get this down while I can still think straight. While I can still separate what happened from what my brain's trying to tell me happened. My name's David Swimmer. I was park maintenance supervisor for the Hazel Creek Trail System in the Smokies. 11 years on these trails. I know every drainage pattern, every elevation marker, every bridge that needs checking after a storm. I'm Cherokee, Bryson City born and raised. And when the elders tell us to keep certain ridgelines closed, I update the maps and file the paperwork. No questions asked. But I always thought we were just being respectful, diplomatic, honoring cultural boundaries. I didn't think those closures were warnings. This was October of last year, 2021, We were short-staffed after storm damage tore through the watershed, and I was running solo night patrols to check structural integrity on the bridges and clear debris. Standard stuff, the kind of work I could do in my sleep. Section 12, near Hazel Creek. That's where the old mining tunnels sit. Been sealed since '74, buried under 40 feet of reclaimed forest. The motion sensors we'd installed near the access points had been triggering every night for a week straight. I figured deer, maybe equipment drifts. I logged it, reset the sensors, and moved on. Then, around 10 o'clock on the 14th, my radio crackled to life. Channel 7, maintenance ops frequency. And I heard my own voice say, "Trail's clear, heading back." Static, then this low whistle. 3 notes, descending, definitely human. Here's the thing, my radio was off. It had been since 1830 hours to save battery. I checked, powered down, battery removed, sitting cold in my pack. But the transmission logs I pulled later, they show my voice signature. My call sign, MS-14 Swimmer, timestamp 2203.17. The audio analysis confirmed a 94% voice print match. I didn't transmit anything. I couldn't sleep that night. Ran the recording through our wildlife audio spectrograph, looking for digital artifacts, compression glitches, anything that made sense. The waveform was clean. Too clean, actually. And buried underneath, way down in the subsonic range, around 18 hertz, there was this rhythmic pulse. Slow, patient, like a heartbeat that had all the time in the world. I'd heard about that frequency before. In the stories my grandmother used to tell about Sul Kalu, the giant who walks between shadows, who mimics voices to test whether you belong to the mountain or just pass through it. I didn't believe those stories. Not really. 2 days later, the motion sensors triggered again. Sustained activity for 47 minutes straight. That's not deer. That's not equipment failure. So I hiked out with a full kit. Motorola APX 6000XE, Garmin GPS, FlyR thermal camera, emergency beacon, everything. Found the old ventilation shaft at the base of the watershed. We're talking infrastructure that's been welded shut for nearly 50 years. Rusted grating, warning signs faded to ghosts. But the air coming out of it was cold. It was mid-October, still getting 60s at night. This air was maybe 35 degrees, and it smelled wrong. Like ozone after a lightning strike, but mixed with damp stone and something else I can't quite. Burnt copper? No, burnt hair. That's closer. And I heard whistling, human whistling. 3 descending notes. Same pattern as the radio transmission. I should have turned around, I know that now. But I thought maybe someone was trapped down there, or kids had broken through the grating, or I don't know. I've run search and rescue for a decade. You don't ignore distress signals. I went in. The shaft drops about 60 feet before it connects to the main tunnel. Old timber supports, railroad tracks still visible under the mud. My headlamp beam only penetrated maybe 20 feet before the darkness just absorbed it, like it was hungry. That's when my radio started talking, in my voice. Section 12 patrol log, bridge structural integrity confirmed. That's exactly what I was about to say, word for word, but I hadn't keyed the mic yet. I stopped walking. The voice continued. Proceeding to ventilation access point, I turned off the radio. I pulled the battery out, dropped it in my pocket. The voice kept going, echoing from deeper in the tunnel. Per standard protocol, no anomalies detected. Then it laughed, not my laugh. Something using my voice to approximate laughter, assembling the sound, stitching it together from recordings it shouldn't have. "David," it said, "you're late." I ran the thermal camera. Nothing. Just cold stone and standing water showing up as dark blue and black on the screen. But I could see something moving. Shadows rippling along the tunnel walls, flowing independent of my light source. Flowing upward, against gravity, pooling in the ceiling joists like liquid smoke. My GPS started acting up. The Fortrex showed my position tracking in a perfect circle, radius about 12 feet, even though I was walking in a straight line deeper into the tunnel. The geometry was wrong. Passages that I documented on historical mind maps, passages that were supposed to be sealed and filled, were opening, and they didn't match the blueprints. They curved at angles that made my inner ear scream, sloped in ways that violated basic physics. I checked my watch. 2017 hours, 18 minutes since entry. That's when my flashlight died. In the dark, the mimicry got worse. It wasn't just my voice anymore. It was my father's. He's been dead 6 years. Calling my name the way he used to when I'd stayed out past curfew. Then it was my supervisor's voice, reading back my own patrol reports. word-perfect recall of things I'd written months ago, all of them layered, harmonized, coming from every direction at once. I activated the emergency strobe on my beacon. For 5 full seconds, I counted. The light did nothing, just vanished into the air like the tunnel itself was swallowing photons. Then it illuminated, and I saw it. I don't know what to call it. The official reports will say mass hallucination or carbon monoxide exposure, so I'll just describe what I saw. A figure, humanoid shape, maybe 8 feet tall, but wrong in ways I can't articulate. Its surface didn't reflect light, it absorbed it, like deep water at night. The edges of its form rippled and bent, and every time I blinked, it was in a different position, not walking, just existing somewhere else, like space was folding around it. It had no face, or it had too many. I couldn't focus long enough to tell. When it spoke, I felt the sound in my chest before I heard it in my ears, subsonic vibration that rattled my ribs. David Swimmer, you belong here. Not a question. The thermal camera showed nothing, but I checked the audio spectrograph later, and it recorded infrasonic pulses at 12 hertz. That's identical to seismic precursor waves, the kind you get before major earthquakes. It stepped closer. The tunnel bent around it like reality was made of water, and it spoke again, in perfect unison. My voice and my father's voice and 3 others I didn't recognize. The mountain remembers its children. I don't remember deciding to run. I just was, stumbling through the dark, following the only sound I trusted, my own distress beacon, transmitting on 406 megahertz, that tone I'd heard 1,000 times in training drills. The tunnel fought me. I swear to God, the walls moved. Passages closed, reopened, curved back on themselves. My GPS showed me walking in a Mobius strip, going nowhere. But I kept following the beacon tone, eyes down, didn't look at the shadows. Didn't listen to the voices calling my name in my own rhythm, my own cadence. When I broke through the ventilation shaft into open air, the sun was rising. My watch read 20:43 hours, 48 minutes since entry. But it was dawn, October 17th. I lost 16 hours. The Park Service response was predictable. They attributed everything to possible carbon monoxide accumulation and probable dissociative fugue state. I'm on desk duty now, pending psychiatric evaluation. Maybe they're right to be concerned, because I can't stop looking at the data. I've been cross-referencing missing person reports with the Hazel Creek Tunnel System since 1974. Using historical maps, incident logs, old newspaper clippings from the Bryson City archives. Every disappearance, 17 people over 47 years, forms a ring around the watershed, a perfect territorial boundary. Radius approximately 2.3 miles from that primary ventilation shaft. The Park Service closed those tunnels in '74. The official reason was structural instability and liability, but I found the original closure request buried in the tribal liaison archives, co-signed by 3 Cherokee elders and a federal mining inspector. The request doesn't mention safety. It uses the word containment. I talked to Thomas Wolfe, elder, traditional knowledge keeper, same man who helped draft our trail closure protocols back in the '90s. I told him what happened. He wasn't surprised. Tsul Kelu, he said, the one who tests. The stories describe it as a giant, a shapeshifter, a guardian of boundary spaces. It mimics the voices of those who trespass, and if you answer, if you follow, it determines whether you belong to the mountain or merely visit it. Those who belong are changed, claimed. Those who don't are sent back, usually. He told me the mines didn't create it, they just disturbed it. Opened a door that should have stayed closed. It only calls the ones who belong to the mountain, he said. Then he looked at me for a long time and asked, "Did you answer?" I didn't know what to say. I still don't. They closed those tunnels for a reason, and it wasn't safety or liability. It was respect or fear, and I think we're running out of both. I'm requesting a full closure of Section 12, permanent signage upgrades, a review of all historical incident reports tied to the Hazel Creek watershed. But I know they won't approve of it. They'll say I'm traumatized, unreliable, seeing patterns where there aren't any. Maybe they're right, but if you're ever in the Smokies after dark and you hear someone calling your name from the ridge, don't answer. It's not. I still hear it sometimes, in the static between radio channels. Whistling, 3 notes, descending. It knows my name, and I think I'm still waiting for my answer. I need to say this while I can still think clearly, while I can still separate what I saw from what the reports will say I saw. My name is James Blackbird. I was SAR coordinator for the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. 12 years doing search and rescue in these mountains. Wildland firefighter before that. I know terrain assessment, thermal mapping, radio triangulation, lost person behavior models. I know how to read weather, how to predict where someone lost will go, how to find them before exposure does its work. I thought I understood these mountains. This happened in March of 2015. We had record fog density that week, temperature inversions all along the Deep Creek to Clingman's Dome Ridge system. Standard conditions for that time of year, just more intense than usual. We got a call about a missing hiker, male, 34. Last confirmed at Deep Creek trail marker, 7.2. The weather was deteriorating fast, the fog getting thicker by the hour. I deployed our thermal drone for an aerial sweep. FLIR View Pro R, standard equipment, good visibility even through dense cloud cover. I was reviewing the footage when I saw it. There was a cold pocket in the thermal imaging, about 20 feet in diameter, showing 31 degrees Fahrenheit, completely surrounded by a stable 58-degree zone. Now, temperature inversions can create some weird pockets, especially at elevation. I've seen it before, but this pocket was moving, against the wind, in a spiral pattern. I watched it for maybe 10 minutes, tracking the footage frame by frame. The radius was expanding at 0.3 feet per second. Perfect geometric progression, mathematical precision. Cold air doesn't behave like that. It settles, pools in low spots, flows downhill. It doesn't move in spirals with geometric consistency. We found the hiker the next morning. Hypothermia, disoriented, but alive. He kept saying he'd followed blue lights, said they appeared at knee height, moving in circles, and he thought they were our search team markers guiding him to safety. We don't use blue lights. Red and white for ground teams, green for air support. I asked him what exactly he saw. He described them as faint flames, bioluminescent maybe, hovering just above the ground in perfect concentric circles. I logged it as possible hallucination due to hypothermia and exposure, but I couldn't stop thinking about the coordinates where we'd found him. See, I'm Cherokee, Eastern Band raised near Bryson City. My grandmother, she kept these old maps, hand-drawn, marking places we weren't supposed to go after dark. Crossing places, she called them, said they were where the Nunahai moved between their world and ours. The immortal people, that's what Nunahai means. I'd always thought they were teaching stories, metaphors for respecting the wilderness, understanding that some terrain is just too dangerous, too unpredictable. The coordinates where we found that hiker matched one of her crossing places, exactly. So I did something I probably shouldn't have. I started pulling data. 10 years of missing person reports, every case I could access. Plotted them all on a map, overlaid them with my grandmother's boundaries. Every single case, every single one, fell within 200 meters of a crossing place. 43 disappearances. Perfect correlation. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. 3 days later, we lost one of our own. Rachel Kemp, 28, experienced backcountry volunteer. She was doing a grid sweep near Clingman's Dome. The weather was clear, visibility good, no obvious hazards. She missed a radio check, which wasn't like her at all. Her last GPS ping showed something impossible. The temperature dropped by 17 degrees in 40 seconds, then stabilized. I had 3 separate Kestrel weather meters in that sector. None of them recorded an inversion. Barometric pressure was normal. The wind was consistent. But that cold spot showed up on every thermal sensor we had. I suspended the search at dawn, protocol when conditions deteriorate, but I couldn't sleep. Kept reviewing the drone footage from her last position. At timestamp 15:11:37, there was a flash in the thermal spectrum. Blue-white, lasting 1.3 seconds. Right in the center of that cold zone. Not a reflection, not a sensor artifact. Light, real light, appearing in a perfect circle around her last known position. I went through my grandmother's journals that night. Found her entry about Nunahai. She wrote, "They are not spirits. They are the land itself, made aware. They guard the places where the veil is thin. If you cross with respect, they guide you. If you cross in ignorance, they claim you." The page was torn after that, but I remembered her telling me the rest when I was a kid, sitting on her porch during thunderstorms. "If you cross in malice," she'd said, They return you hollow. The next night, I went back out there alone. The official log said I was resetting a beacon after equipment failure. 3 GPS units, 2 radios, 1 weather station all failed simultaneously during the search. Standard procedure meant someone stayed behind to troubleshoot. That's what I told command. Truth is, I needed to see it for myself. I reached the boundary line around 8 o'clock, the place where Kemp disappeared. The temperature was 61 degrees ambient on a comfortable March evening. Then, about 20 feet in front of me, I watched my breath turn to fog. The air started shimmering, like heat distortion, but everything was getting colder, not hotter. And there was light, blue light, faint, hovering maybe knee-high, moving in a slow circle, perfect circle. My Garmin GPS went haywire. Compass reading started rotating, 180 degrees. Back again, spinning like it couldn't find magnetic north. The light was responding to my movement. When I shifted left, it shifted. When I stepped forward, it pulsed brighter. I crossed the circle. The temperature stabilized immediately, exactly 32 degrees. Freezing, but constant, like I'd passed through a threshold into a different climate zone entirely. That's when I heard the voices, from inside the fog, calling my name. Blackbird, James Blackbird. That was Kemp's voice. I knew her voice. We'd worked together for 3 years, but she was saying my SAR call number. Echo 72, command designation. She shouldn't have known that. Nobody outside command knows those codes. The fog got thicker, too thick. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, but I could see the lights. Dozens of them now. Blue flames, hovering, moving in formation. Concentric circles, contracting inward. My radio started playing back my own voice, giving orders I hadn't given yet. Echo 72, maintain position. I hadn't said that. Echo 72, boundary protocol in effect? We don't have a boundary protocol. The cold was absolute, silent, like the air itself had stopped existing, stopped carrying sound the normal way, and the fog started forming shapes, humanoid shapes, translucent. I could see through them, but they were solid enough to displace air. I could hear pressure shifts when they moved, like standing near a helicopter rotor, but quieter, more deliberate. One of them reached out and touched my sleeve. It burned, like dry ice, instant frostbite, but the fabric wasn't damaged, just cold, impossibly cold. I looked at my watch, 2017. I stood there, I don't know how long. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. The entities circled me, forming a ring, and they just observed. No hostility, no aggression, just awareness. And they observed back. When they released me, and that's what it felt like, being released, not escaping, the blue lights formed a path, leading back toward the ridge. I followed them, and the cold just stopped, abruptly, right at the tree line, like crossing a threshold back into the normal world. I found Kemp's radio at the boundary marker, battery full, functionally intact, just abandoned there, no sign of her. When I checked my recorder later, there was a gap, 2017 to 2039. 22 minutes gone, but I'd been standing there for what felt like hours. I filed the official report the next day, attributed everything to thermal inversion instability, terrain hazards, light distortion, operator fatigue, listed Kemp as unrecovered, presumed deceased due to environmental exposure. Standard language, standard conclusions. It's all factually accurate, and none of it's honest. I talked to Thomas Wolfe a few days later, elder, traditional knowledge keeper. Same man who'd helped my grandmother document the old boundaries decades ago. I didn't tell him everything, just asked about the Nunnehi, what they are, what they do. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, they are the land made conscious, not spirits, awareness. They exist where the boundary between worlds is thin, and they enforce it, not with malice, with inevitability. I asked if they harm people. They don't harm, he said. They warn, and if the warning is ignored, they claim. Claim how? He looked at me like I already knew the answer. They take what crosses. They keep it. Between. I spent the next 2 weeks mapping every disappearance in the park. Going back 30 years, 43 cases total. Every single one falls within the boundaries my grandmother marked. Every single one. The Park Service calls them high-risk terrain zones. Unstable ground, weather hazards, difficult rescue access. But the Cherokee called them crossing places, boundary lines. Places where the immortal people maintain the threshold between worlds, and we've been sending people across them for decades, telling them it's safe, it's just wilderness, just respect, leave no trace principles, and you'll be fine. We never told them the terrain listens. I can't put this in any official report. Can't tell command that their missing person clusters align with ancestral no-go zones because the land itself enforces boundaries. They'd pull my certification, psychiatric evaluation, desk duty at best, termination at worst. But I know what I saw. I've been monitoring the thermal data every night since it happened. The cold pockets are still forming. Same locations, same spiral patterns. And when I play back my audio recordings from inside that circle, nearby thermometers drop 5 degrees. Exactly 5. Every single time. It's like the recording itself carries the boundary. Like I brought something back with me. I teach rangers to respect the terrain, navigation, weather patterns, wildlife behavior, leave no trace principles. I never taught them that the terrain listens back, that it remembers who respects it and who doesn't. That some boundaries aren't on any map because they were never meant to be crossed. I keep hearing it now, in the static between radio channels. Faint voices calling numbers. Echo 7-2. My windows fog from the inside, even though the heat's on. And 3 nights ago, I saw a blue light outside my cabin, just for a second, knee height, moving in a slow circle around the perimeter. Then it was gone. I think they're checking, making sure I understand, making sure I remember the boundary. I applied for a transfer last week. Different parks, different mountains. Somewhere the boundaries aren't so thin, but I'll carry this with me. The knowledge that some places aren't meant for us, that respect isn't just courtesy. It's a survival protocol written by people who understand the land better than we ever will. The Smokies remember, and they enforce. Kemp is still out there. I know she is. I can feel it when I pass certain ridge lines, when the temperature drops and the air goes silent. She's between worlds. And maybe that's where she'll stay. The boundaries are real. The Nunahai are real. And they're not guarding against us. They're guarding us, keeping something on the other side, or keeping us from crossing over and never coming back. Wait, do you hear that? Boundary respected.